everyone, here I'm going to show you how to configure the Elite Series 2 controller on the Xbox Series X. So to do this, have your controller connected and then hit the light up button on the controller, so the big X logo. What that'll do is take you to this screen, and then if you use your left stick to go down to Xbox Accessories, press A on there and you should come to this area here. So you can see we've got this option here, and it says Elite, and it's got default, default 2, default 3, and over the standard controller on the Xbox you have so much more configuration options on here, so that's what we're going to go through here. So first of all, we're going to hit configure, so hit A to go into that screen, and you can see you've got these different areas here. You've got default 1, default 2, default 3, and I'm using the left stick to go between them, and they correspond to the three lights that you see on the controller. So you see on the kind of in the middle between the D-pad and the right stick, there's little three light up things, and if you look on your controller in real life, what you should see is one of those is lit up, and they sort of correspond to these three things. So if you flick that button just above the three lights, it will flick between those three different profiles. So the reason this is cool is if you're playing different games, you might have one setup that's cool for first-person shooters, one that's cool for driving, and another one that's just, I don't know, one that you're experimenting with, or whatever you like. It's up to you. So I'm going to show you how you override all of these things and come up with different profiles for this. So to do this, we move the left stick up to New Profile, and then press A, and it'll say, well, what do you want to call this? So you can call it whatever you want. You could go with profile 1, 2, 3, whatever, or you could come up with something that kind of makes sense to you in the game. So maybe you're going to say FPS, and you're going to come up with settings that are good for FPS. So we'll go with that, and then down the bottom right, I could either hit the menu button or just press A while I'm over this little button here on the bottom right of the keyboard that's popped up. So what then happens is we get this horrendously complicated looking page that has mapping, left stick, right stick, triggers, vibration, brightness. Now, if you've looked at the standard Xbox controller, you get none of this. You've not got this kind of a level of sophistication with the configuration. That was good, wasn't it? Sophistication configuration. So what we can do here, we can map all of the different buttons. What's quite cool, over the standard controller, you can even change around the left trigger and right trigger, which simply isn't an option on the other one. And underneath, whether you have them on or off, you've got all these paddles that you can assign different buttons to as well. So we can move over these different buttons by using the left stick, and this lets us configure any of these. So let's say we want to have a little look at this button down here, this sort of kind of bottom button on the base of the controller using one of our little sticks here. So you can see that's currently mapped to the X button, but if I press A here, it says, okay, well, what do you want the primary button to be? So I can then press A here, and I can use a different button here. So I could say that I want it to access something else. Now, it doesn't just have to map a button like you can see here. You can also map it, as you can see over the up the top there. If we go back up, we've got this option to go to action, so you can have it access any of these things as well. So it's really up to you how you set these. You could have it as a start, stop recording button, take a screenshot button, whatever you want. So let's just say we want this to pick something else. So let's just say we want it to be another one for the left trigger. So I'm saying primary left trigger. You can also have it as a shift button, and what this means is if you hold that down, any sort of buttons where you've put a second option using the shift, you can have here as well, but only if you activate that. So if you want to use that as an alternate when you're holding shift somewhere else, you can do, or rather you want to use this as shift, you can do that there, and you can see these then all grey out, and the shift button will then access multiple buttons on something else. So that's another option. Anyway, let's pop that back there. So what we've said here, I actually forgot to save it, so because I did the shift button, but let's say we want that as a left trigger as well. So we come back out, and you can see now it's saying primary left trigger shifted X button. But at the minute we don't have a button assigned to shift. So we could say this A button we want to assign to a shift. So I could have that as a shift button. And then what's going to happen is when I hold down shift on that, if I use it, then that's going to mean that the left trigger below would be X if I've got shift held down, or just left trigger if I haven't. So it kind of takes a little while to get your head around, but you get the idea. So you can go around and map any of these things to be different if you so wish. Now, this is just the mapping of all the individual buttons. There's still way more we can do than this. So if you want to reset it to default, you can do that here, and it'll just reset it back to how it was. But if we go up the top, you can do some cool things with the left stick, right stick, etc. that you can't do with a standard controller. So you can see here we've got this assignment here. So we've got assignment, primary or shift. We're just going to leave that there. But you can see the way the left stick moves as I move the left stick on the right hand side. And if I want, I can change that here with the sensitivity curve. So if I press A on this and use the D-pad, I can have it aggressive, so it's going to be far quicker on the movement. I can have it instant, so it's boom, boom, or smooth, or whatever I want. So to access these, obviously you're seeing the left stick control here, you're using your D-pad to move between them. So I'll just put it back to default for the minute. And you've also got the calculation, you can have access independent true diagonals and all sorts of stuff. I'm not going to go into all of that stuff, it's all very geeky. I'm just showing you that you can adjust the sensitivity of this, the speed it moves. So that's just on the default. Remember, we can always go back and reset everything to default if we want. So moving along, if we hit the right button, we'll move to the right stick, and you've got exactly the same things here as well. Now, interesting stuff is you can also adjust the sensitivity of your triggers. So this is pretty cool. You've got the left trigger and the right trigger. So if we just hold the right trigger here, you can see there I'm doing a gentle sort of press down of the trigger. Now, underneath your Xbox Elite controller, or rather your Elite controller, you should see just above your buttons, you've got kind of like a little button with a longer and a smaller sort of mode. There's 3 different modes, and if you try flicking between them, you won't break it, but you get like a smaller travel of the sort of trigger. And this is kind of locking the movement, but it still translates into some sort of effectiveness here as well. So if you're interested in first-person shooters and you need a kind of like real fast trigger, you might set that to short. So the one sort of most down, it looks like a solid dot. And then you've got no play or very little play in that trigger there. It's virtually instant. But if you want to bump that to be even more, you can go to the right trigger here, and you can see I've got no play at all now. But if I moved it up, I've got a bit more play. So it's up to you how much control you want over that, or how sort of, I suppose, great a range of motion you want. That's up to you, but you can play with it here. So you may want to have one trigger set different to another one, but it's nice as I'm pressing between the left and the right trigger, I'm seeing how these go here. So it's interesting that you've got that. There's also this mode to mirror the triggers. So if you set one and you go, yeah, that's how I want the other one, you can hit this here, and this will mirror both to be the same. So if we now go back up, you can see they both move together because we've got the mirror mode on. So often you're probably going to want those similar, I would think. So mirror triggers is quite a useful thing. So we'll just put that back up to full again. But I just wanted to show you, again, that's something you can do over the standard controller that you can't. Also cool is the vibration mode in this controller is a lot more interesting than the standard controller. So you have 4 vibration points, and you can turn these up or down depending on how annoying you want them. So if you go, you can probably hear that on the mic, the left trigger here sort of activates and gives you a preview as I'm sliding through using the left stick here. So if I find any of these annoying, I can just turn them off. So I go, do you know what, I hate that left, or rather the triggers, I don't ever want those vibrating, and I also don't want the main controller to vibrate, or maybe I just want it just a tiny bit. So I could do that there like that, and I'll have a much gentler vibration there. The last one is the brightness. This controls the brightness of your sort of light up logo. It's not a big change, but if you want to have it dim for, like if you're playing in the dark and you find it distracting, or indeed you want it as dark as possible, you can do that all here. So when you're happy with all your changes, you just hit B to come back out, and then you can see kind of like a little summary of what we've done here compared to the other ones. So I obviously haven't done much here, I'm just showing you the principle behind it. But if I decide I want to put this in one of these 3 slots now, I press A while selecting this. So I'm using the D-pad to go up and down here, or the left stick in this case. Come over to slot, and then I can say I want that in slot 1. So that is now going to be when I've selected number one on my, with the middle button just below the Xbox light up controller. You see that one that's sitting below the screens and the menu button? If that's on the first light up one, that's the one I'm going to be using. So if I want a new profile in profile 2, I just create a new one here, and I could say car, for example. So I'm just showing you the principle here. So we've got the car here, and then you could start messing around with this one and see, how you want it. So you might want, I don't know, let's think about this. So we may want our left triggers to have maximum sort of drive there. You may want mapping, so you may want to change your mapping of your buttons underneath. So we could go to these ones here and think about these paddles here. What do we want these to be? So you can change those to whatever. So maybe they're going to be similar to the left trigger and the right trigger, so we want those to change. Left bumper, right bumper, because we're going to use them to change gears a little easier. So we'll go to that one, and we'll say that one we want to be right bumper, and then that's just given us a second option to change gears there, so we can keep our finger on the accelerator and change gear here a little easier than keep moving that finger there. So it's quite cool that you can do those sort of things. So maybe that's the only thing that we want to do. Remember, with these buttons down here, you can turn them off if you want. So we could say, oops, hang on, primary button. We could say we don't want anything here. So it's unmapped. So we can say I don't want to accidentally knock that. We could do the same thing with this here. So we could say primary button unmapped. And that just means, you're not accidentally going to knock it. It's a good option there. Another thing you may want to do is like the left stick click. I hate that left stick click on certain games, so I could turn it as unmapped here. You've obviously got to remember, some games are going to want a left stick click button, so you could maybe assign that somewhere else. So maybe we could go to this button here, maybe this Y, and say actually that's going to be left stick click for me instead. So it's a bit of a random setup that I've got here. Obviously it doesn't make much sense. If I break it, I've got restore to default, but let's say I'm happy with that. So I hit B, come back out to here, and then I'm just going to put this into slot number 2. So I select it here, go to slot number 2, and you can see that's there. So if you ever want to get rid of one of these, you can do that as well. So if I say, do you know what, I don't like that one, I can bin it. So I'm moving the left stick over here, bin would get rid of it. I can also rename it if I've made a mistake with it. This one is renamed, so I could call it whatever here, but I'm not going to, because that kind of makes sense. I can also duplicate it. So if I've done quite a bit of work on a profile and I want to tweak something about it, I can do that with this duplicate button here. So I could call it just copy of car while I'm messing around, and then go into here and change it, or just back out. And if I back out, you can see here's my kind of fourth profile, or rather third profile. Let's just do another copy of that one as well. So we could say, there's a copy of FPS, and yeah, just come out of there. So I can mess around with these without fear of damaging them here, and then I could apply them when I'm happy with them. So then I could maybe say rename this and say this is, maybe it's for sorry, I've not renamed. We could say this is for, I don't know, Forza. So it's really cool that you can keep all these profiles, then you can flick them in and out. And I really like that you've got the ability to have multiple profiles. So we can say we're going to chuck that now in, chuck that in slot 3. So we've got these 3 modes now. So as I hit that button just below the Xbox thing, between 1, 2, and 3 on the lights, those are the 3 profiles that it's going to access. So it's pretty cool that you've got that capability of it. And then remember, if you just want to get rid of one of these, that's fine as well. So you could go to slot 3 and go, I just want that as the default mapping, hit the bin, delete, and you'll see that 3 slot goes back to default with the standard commands, whereas these 2 are done over. I also like that, you're getting like a little summary of what you've done on each of these controller profiles here. So it's warning you, hey, look, your left stick's deactivated on this one, but it's down the bottom right with the the button underneath. That's all good. Another thing to bear in mind is if you don't like the buttons underneath, you can actually physically take them out of the controller, so you don't have to use them. And then you can still assign things to those buttons or turn those buttons off if you just want to use the other parts of it. But it's really cool that you've got this kind of functionality on the controller. So I hope that was useful to you. If it was, give us a thumbs up, please. That's much appreciated. Any comments welcome. I'll see you again on another video. If you like this sort of stuff, have a little look at the rest of my channel. There's all sorts of stuff on Xbox, also games, cover many tutorials on different games like Elden Ring and FIFA 22 and many more. I'm always publishing new videos, so if you like what you see, please hit that subscribe button. You'll be kept up to date with my latest and greatest. Thanks.